Inspirations comes from all over, sort of is all around you. It comes from a conversation you have with your friends, it's something you read in a book, it's a snippet of film you see on the television. Materials and process provides constant inspiration. And then I work with that and link that with certain issues, previous content that's been addressed in other pieces, other works. And then I respond to briefs quite a bit as well. So that sets a certain agenda, and that is a form of inspiration as well, to work from a brief. I do a lot of experimenting. I quite like to start working directly with the material and see where the potential and possibilities are, and from that develop some ideas, some design ideas. And I make art. I don't do functional objects, functional things. Their only function is to communicate a message, to communicate an idea. But it starts with the material, with handling certain things. Without handling material, then I feel really blind and I have no starting point. Started doing collaborative and participatory works maybe 6-7 years ago. After years of making art, I thought I'd turned the situation of the artist on its head. So my position was less about saying something, it's about facilitating a process where different stories can be exchanged. So the viewer becomes the communicator, and through making, through creating works and inviting people to do so, there is an exchange of ideas, and different narratives, different stories meld into the work and then are exchanged, and this ripples out into sort of a broader audience as well. And I recently collaborated with a dancer and we looked at stitching patterns, knitting patterns and dance notation. And there seemed to be a visual equivalent between the two things, and so I brought a choreographer in to develop this piece, and the weaving took place in a gallery in Birmingham in this case, but it started with a choreographic piece. So very interested in the idea or the potential of working with other people, particularly if they work in different areas besides the visual arts and what I do already. The work is framed within, it's shown in a context. You don't see things in isolation. This piece behind me, for instance, is shown alongside sort of the Lovelace exhibition. People will come to this having seen a lot of works, a lot of lace works, and having had an aesthetic experience and thinking about certain sort of forms and materials and uses for things, and that will inform what they do here. So it shapes the idea. The making takes place without, I'm quite into not being privy to all the conversations. How can I be privy to all the conversations that take place while the making goes on? All I can do is decide on what context in which the work will be shown, title the work. The other information is there to contextualize what they see here with other things I've done, and sort of reasons for showing the piece in this, you know, the pieces in their particular location and at particular time. So that frames the sort of the thinking of the viewer. When I studied, I looked at a lot of late modernist sculpture and large pieces of work, usually made out of metal, stone or wood. And they were constructed like buildings are, using very similar materials, let's say. And I'm quite interested in working with scale, making large pieces, not for its own sake, but given the materials I use, which is a lot of yarn and textile and sort of fiber, as well as natural materials, which I use for the basketry work I do. I think there's a prompt a sense of the unexpected, and I think you don't expect to see lace work on the scale in which I produce it and installed in the situations where I am doing that. So with that, I think it redefines the area I'm working in. It redefines people's perception of craft. I look at needlecraft. I quite like to step out of the area, or the traditional area, traditional uses for materials and traditional ways of manipulating them. Not knowing is often a great help. Technique can inhibit. Once you know how to do something, you can't unlearn it, as it were. The moment you're told how to mix your paints and hold your brush, you can't forget that. I'm interested in the space before you know how to do certain things in the traditional way. That's what I prompt with the participatory projects. And it's how I develop work as well. So I feel very comfortable. I feel in a position of power when I don't really know how to handle things, and from that I think great novel ideas come. From that there's a possibility for great innovation and sort of invention. So this piece is probably the 22nd installment of a series I started 5 years ago called Garlands. Each time they're shown in a different context, with a different intent, and I work with different groups of people. We've had a mixture of school groups come and visitors at the museum. We started with the piece of rigging you see at the back there, the metal framework. I did some initial stitching, and the stitching consisted of finger knitting or finger crochet. Nobody seems to be able to decide as to what the exact terminology is, but I call it a finger crochet, as I think it relates less to knitting than crochet. So people are shown a few stitches and then reproduce that in whichever way they can, choosing their own yarn, and then from that other stitches are made, and people come with a lot of experience who then share that experience with other visitors. Others come without any experience and find maybe the crocheting quite difficult to do. However, whatever is made is inspiration for someone else. So from that, with quite an open mind as to how the structure will look like when the project is finished, things are tweaked, things change, different sort of methods and processes are developed that create this large web. Each day, things have to be tweaked a little bit so as to maximize the amount of people who can work in this space, because very quickly you could weave yourself out of the installation, or we'd run out of materials to work with. So a few things have to be done by myself and the volunteers, but I try that to be as minimal as possible, because I want the work to develop in a very organic way, and for people to bring in their own experience, their own understanding of how to do certain things, and respond to what they've seen elsewhere and bring that into the work.